Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Sam Sugar. We're doing a victim video today with Tanna Chism, who's calling from the state of Washington. Tanna, why don't you take it from here? Introduce yourself, and we'd like to hear your story.
My name's Tanna Chism, and I live in Marysville, Washington. And yeah, a long, very hard story of guardianship fraud, where my dad got really sick, and I consulted an attorney to find out how I should protect his assets and how to get him Medicaid. And my idea was to have an irrevocable. Sorry, can we start over?
No, we're just going to go ahead. Irrevocable trust.
Yeah, irrevocable trust. And they actually, said no. That's probably not the best thing. They didn't recommend that. So actually, what they did recommend was that I transfer his home. And because I had a durable power of attorney, they said that it would be completely legal for me to do that. Well, once I did that, and my dad became markedly more ill and was in the hospital, APS got involved and started to actually point the finger at me for financial abuse.
Tell me how Adult Protective Services was notified that there might be a problem.
That's a good question. I have no idea. And they won't reveal actually who called. I know they started to try and get my sister involved, and eventually they did. They worked really hard at doing that and got her to kind of, work against me at one point, which she later has told me that they actually were guiding her to do certain things like sue me, get a restraining order against me and all those kinds of things. So they were definitely using her, trying to use her.
And this is a story that we hear all too frequently when another example of government overreach for someone like you who was trying to do something good for their parent who needed help and instead wound up being victimized by a system of government overreach. So what happened next?
So then it started, the investigation started. She was actually, so she called the police department on me, and then they called the sheriff's department. So a deputy from my county came out and investigated me, and came to my house to investigate me and everything. 154-page investigation.
So were you like buying yachts with the money, or were you, taking French vacations, or what?
Yeah, no, no. Oh no.
And did you keep good records of what you were doing with his estate?
I did, yeah, definitely.
And did that matter in the end?
No, and neither did the sheriff's report. So far, it hasn't. Yeah.
The sheriff's report exonerated you, I presume.
Yes. Yeah. And it even actually says how the APS investigator was standing over my dad's hospital bed, harassing him about getting rid of me as his POA.
So what I'll ask you now is, why did all this happen? Is it because they were looking to help your poor father, or because there was another motive?
I believe there was definitely another motive.
And what is it?
Yeah, because they want to commandeer the house that was transferred.
Is it valuable?
It's not, I'm in it right now. It's not, you can see back, it's not anything extravagant at all. The property taxes have gone up quite a bit. So the value has gone up. I would say now it's valuable.
The point is, it's an asset that they're looking to take over,
right,
when they have no right to be looking to steal your father's house.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, what's happened to your father throughout all? How long has this been going on? A long time, right?
Yeah, since December 2016.
What's with your father right now?
So he is really ill. He needs 24/7 care. Um, and he's in a nursing home. Actually, what's really hard too is just 2 days ago, I had to call the police. My dad wanted to call the police. We called them because he's missing cash. So the state gives them cash, or the guardian is supposed to give them cash once a month, and it's $50 or $60 something.
Yeah, a trivial amount. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that's missing out of his drawer. And he's supposed to have a lockbox, which he had a key for, but the key's missing, and so is the money. And so he was telling me about this. We called the police, and I explained that to them. And the guardian is also not even paying him. So she missed a payment. There's no explanation why. I explained this all to the police department, and so, yeah, there's not really a whole lot they can do. I can go into the county courthouse and make a formal complaint on the guardian and the other situation with the nursing home, but they're taking advantage of them.
And who chose this guardian? And is it a family guardian or a professional guardian?
I'm not sure. I think she goes by professional guardian. And what's interesting about this is that the APS agent, so my dad eventually went to go live with my sister because they got that. The APS agent was behind the whole thing, got my sister involved, removed me, talked my dad into removing me as his POA, got my sister involved. He moved out there with her, which is in Eastern Washington. And so that's kind of how that happened. Is she actually was talking, the APS agent talked her into getting an attorney, trying to go after me with a lawsuit to do what? Get the house. And then, on and on and on. So it was recommended her to hire this attorney. The attorney said, well, I recommend this guardian. Okay. So that's kind of how that all rolled out.
It's a very, very comfortable brotherhood of incestuous predators. The trouble with APS that we have found over the years is that they're part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Yeah. And once this process gets rolling, it cannot be stopped. No. And I'll ask you, by moving your father to your sister, you've been isolated from your father, correct?
I was for a time.
Did they give a court order to keep you away from him?
They tried. So they, tried to get my sister to do the, what is it called? The
restraining order?
Yeah, the restraining order, thank you. And that didn't work. Wrong county. I mean, all kinds of mistakes were made. They were, screwing up all over the place.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever had any encounters with the justice system? No. I mean, are you a fugitive from the law? No. Are you an escaped convict?
Yeah, no.
No.
So not even ever. Never been to jail. Ever.
This took you totally off guard, I presume.
Definitely.
Now, you and your father had taken all the appropriate steps. You had a durable power of attorney. Did he have a healthcare power of attorney for you as well?
I think that was, if I look at it, it's actually covers the health as well.
So all the papers were in place.
Correct.
And yet they were not effectuated. Can you explain why that happened?
They were desperately trying to cover it up. I went to court several times and tried to present that, say, look, actually there was a durable power of attorney. He did it way before he got sick. And
yet they just ignored it.
Yes. Yeah.
Did the guardian ever present it during the guardianship hearings? Did the judge? No, of course not. They hid it. And so your story is exactly the same as hundreds and hundreds of other stories we've done. What has this done to you and then to your entire family?
I'm the only one to take care of my dad, so I can only assume that this is easy pickings for them. But they didn't think I was going to hang in there like I have and fight like I have.
How many times have you been to court?
Oh gosh, no, I've lost count. It's just been touch and go and just, pretty
But many,
chaotic.
many times.
Enough times that, yeah,
And
at least 3 to 4.
the rest of your family and your relationship with them, what's that like?
Actually, it's good. I only have another sister, where my dad went to go live with my older sister. And, you know, it's good. It's not bad. I think, sure, you siblings argue, you fight. One of the siblings usually like holds something against the other one for 30 years ago. So, that's not out of the scope of that. So, but otherwise it's good.
So the good news is that they haven't done anything horrible to your father except moved him. Has he been over medicated?
I believe he has. There's
And
been
did he require those kind of medications before all this happened?
no. Mm-mm.
So this is the absolute classic story of government overreach, where the very people who are supposed to be helping people who need assistance, are actually injuring them and their families because they have an ulterior motive. And that motive isn't necessarily to help anyone, it's
No.
to help themselves to an estate.
And that's just it. See, okay, so my dad has cancer. It's leukemia. The Guardian has not once gotten him into the cancer clinic, where they discovered that. Not one time.
And is he getting treatment for his leukemia?
No, she has not gotten him into.
So the Guardian, in a health sense, has completely abandoned your father and just left him to die, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's been several times too when I go out to see him. I go and see him regularly, several times if I can a week. But I'm now working, a couple different jobs, trying to get a business going. So very busy. But I still make time to go see him and be with him and make sure he's eating. And yeah, there's been times, I show up and he's still in his, he's been in his urine for several hours.
So has the Guardian provided anything, or the guardianship provided anything of benefit to your sick father?
No. And they know he's wanted to get out of there.
Has the Guardian ever actually visited your father?
She has a couple of times.
But this has been going on since 2016?
Let's see, he went in there in 2017.
2017. So in a couple of years, the Guardian has seen him a couple of times?
A few times at least, like a few times. And one of the times was actually to go for a care meeting. And it wasn't a care meeting, it was a meeting to actually pressure me to give up the house. And the Guardian had even told me and put the pressure on me, well, the county prosecutor's looking into you.
And why do you think they have such an acute interest in the house?
Money.
Money for what?
For them, actually, the first time at the guardianship hearing, I could not believe this, but I remember the judge kind of mumbling under his breath at the end when they completely shut me out. Ran over my POA and everything like that. Just completely ignored it. And at the very end, he goes something about lining your coffers, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And he was talking to the Guardian, the attorneys.
Indicating that they were about to line their coffers, or?
Yeah. And they were, because the house had come up and how that they wanted to go, proceed in legal action with what in Washington State is called a TEDRA. And that is another thing that the APS agent and the attorney recommended that my sister do, is start that process. And she didn't have the authority to do that. And so.
Do you know, is the house up for sale now? Is it under
No.
attack? So
No.
you managed to quash that for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know why the house is so important. It's because when the house is sold in what we refer to here in Florida as a straw man sale,
Mm-hmm.
the proceeds will be put into an account that will go to pay the guardians and the lawyers,
Right, yes,
and everybody else involved. So they're looking for a payday, because
mm-hmm.
otherwise they have to get paid by the state at a lower rate.
Right, correct.
Now, do you know anybody else that's ever gone through this?
I don't personally. I mean, I've heard a couple of different stories similar, but not to this extent.
So is it a problem that you know of in your area of Washington where this
Yeah,
is
I do.
going?
Actually, there's actually another person that's in the same facility that my dad's in, and he ended up in the hospital. The guy's walking around. He's been mistaken for the maintenance man in there. I'm not kidding, yeah. And, he ended up in the hospital for a couple of different conditions that he's fine now. And he has a guardian. The guardians, the attorney's guardian went into the hospital, said, you need a guardian. And then he gets out, goes into this rehab center, and he's stuck there.
Can't get out.
No, he cannot get out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just walks around.
Now, let me ask you,
live on his own.
Was your father put on Medicaid?
I fought to get him on Medicaid. And then finally, after like a year, that was one of the things they were trying to do. Well, if he doesn't have Medicaid, then we have to have the house. That was their whole whole reason. So then he has Medicaid now, and no, there is no reason, absolutely no reason for them to go after the house. So at all.
And that may be the reason that they've eased up, because once they put him on Medicaid so that the taxpayer pays his bills, would he have been able to take care of himself with his own money under normal circumstances? No.
Yeah, no.
Because it's the illness that drives this. So having been through this since 2017, what would you say to the average Joe who might be watching this video? What would you tell him?
Oh gosh, well, if you're an average Joe, but your parents have worked all their lives, or even if you are, even if you have a business, if you're, if you're taking care of your parents, or you think you might have to, just make sure that they have things planned out. Make sure you have things planned out. If you have your own business, like I was saying, and usually business owners accumulate assets, you're a target. You're a target for them. If your parents have any assets, they're a target. Any family member that has assets is a target for these people. So protect your assets. Elder law attorneys are good with doing that. Plan for Medicaid. If you don't need Medicaid, then that's great. Get with an insurance agent.
What would be your comment if you were asked to comment on the guardianship process in Washington?
The process of guardianship?
Well, the whole idea of guardianship, is this something that you would recommend for anybody under any circumstances?
No. Oh, God, no.
No.
Yeah, no, not at all.
We always say the best guardianship is the one that doesn't happen. But it sounds like you guys took all the right moves, made all the right plans, and it just didn't matter. Is that the impression you got too?
Yeah, it didn't, it was their way, they pushed their way so hard. It's been their way or the highway. Doesn't matter.
What would you say about the judges in this system?
Oh boy. Well,
I mean, you're
You
you're a
know,
taxpayer. They work for us, you know.
right? Yeah. Well, the whole thing is too is that you know, if the APS agent and their attorneys can, and the guardian, who have all have actually been in kind of collusion in front of the judge, like it's no big deal, you know. Um,
Was your father ever allowed to be at any of the hearings about his guardianship?
you know, that's an interesting question that you have there. So when the first guardianship hearing came up, he was in the hospital. So that is kind of their way of doing this here. It appears you end up in the hospital. You're sick enough for them to come heralding in saying, "Oh, well, this person needs a guardian." That's when they do it, and you don't have to. You know, my dad wasn't there.
Was he ever allowed to go to a hearing?
I actually brought that up, and you know, at a later point, saying he was never able to attend his own hearing. That didn't
Matter.
no.
Well, sad to say, your story is incredibly familiar. It's a carbon copy with a twist here and a twist there. The good news is that you and your sister aren't at war with each other. And the bad news is that your father is the victim in all of this because he's still sick and the guardian has failed to do anything about his leukemia, which he will eventually die of.
Yeah, and they are trying to sue me as well. So they can't, you know, they couldn't go after my dad, you know, that worked all of his life for the assets that he accumulated. So they're going after me.
Sure.
So
because through you, they can get to what he's accumulated.
They're going to try, and they haven't been successful.
Any last words for our viewing audience today?
Oh my gosh, you know, like I say, you know, nobody in this country works their entire life, you know, accumulates things in the pursuit of happiness to have them, you know, legally commandeered, you know, legally stolen from you at the end of your life or even any time before then. You know, nobody in their right mind works their entire life for that, to have that happen. So, you know.
And I hope your message resonates with everybody that's going to view this video, because what we've discovered over the years, this is a big problem. Mm-hmm. It's happening in every state in the country, some places more than other. Washington State, because of tech money, has become a haven for these kind of operators. And once these actions start, as you will, I'm sure, agree, they're unstoppable. There's nothing anybody can do. And I always give the advice, if there's any way to prevent a guardianship, if there's any alternative to a guardianship, mm-hmm. I think you would agree, use any alternative possible, because guardianship is the worst alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and making sure that your family is aware. I think if you're an elderly adult and you're trying to figure out who's going to be the power of attorney in the family, I would make sure everybody's together and they clearly understand who is going to be, and, you know, educate yourselves on what these people do, and just make sure that your family's on the same page with who's going to be, you know, handling.
And who knows your parent, that everybody knows your parents' wishes. And that's the reason I wrote the book, Guardianships and the Elderly, The Perfect Crime. It's available on Amazon. And I hope that this message that you and I are sharing today, and what the book does, gets out to the widest possible audience, because people need to know so it doesn't happen to them. Tanna, thank you very much. I appreciate it.